Welcome to the Wealthy Woman's Podcast, a podcast for high-achieving women who are great at making money but struggle to build wealth. You'll learn how to take control of your money, increase your net worth, and make more. Ladies, it's time to create a life with more money and more freedom. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited about today's episode because I have my husband joining me today. Yes, in honor of Valentine's Day, I have my husband here and we're going to talk all about love, marriage, and money. And so many of you have heard my story. If you are not familiar with my story, go to episode number 2, which is titled My Not So Pretty Money Story. And I share candidly about how my husband and I, we struggled. We had a whole bunch of debt, over $200,000 worth of debt, how we got out of it, how we built up our net worth, built our dream home, and literally changed our lives. But it wasn't always rainbows and daisies. We had our challenges. And as you'll hear today, a lot of those challenges really did stem from our childhood, how we grew up, and how we viewed money or how we didn't view money. Just the lack of knowledge that we had. And so I am so excited for this episode because when couples are unable to agree on how to manage their money, it can lead to a lack of trust, a lack of intimacy, and ultimately it could lead to divorce. And so in honor of Valentine's Day, I wanted to bring my husband on to chat with you all about love, money, and more specifically, how we navigated through our money challenges as a married couple. So I'm not going to keep you waiting. I'm going to bring him on right now. Mitt, are you there?
I am here. Hello. Excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you here as well. And I'm sure everyone is going to enjoy this conversation that we're going to have. I know I said we're going to have a candid conversation, but you told me that it's not going to be the red table talk kind of conversation, right?
I said no Jada Pinkett, Will Smith stuff going on here, but yeah, we can still have a candid conversation. So I'm excited to be here and participate in the podcast. I think it's something that we're both passionate about and excited to share my side of the story.
Yes, his side of the story. So he's here just to set the record straight. But we're going to just start from the beginning. And let's just start here. What were some of the biggest financial challenges you think we faced together?
Biggest financial challenges. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges, at least for me, is my spending habits. And I realize now, reflecting back, that my spending habits were deeply rooted in my past. These were strong habits that I had developed over a long period of time. And I grew up in a single parent household. My mother did an amazing job raising 3 boys by herself, but never learned about budgeting, saving, credit, investing. And, as I got older, I continued those same habits that I kind of learned growing up. And when I had kids, for me, it was about trying to give my boys everything that I didn't have. At least that's what I thought I was doing for them. I was buying them everything, just really splurging on the kids, trying to give them the world. And it brought joy to me for sure. But it also brought a lot of stress for us over time. We started to have more arguments over money, and it was a cycle. I didn't even realize I was perpetuating, just trying to give kids all of the material things that I didn't have. And ultimately, I looked at my parents and other folks that I knew, and I realized that I wasn't on the right path, and I didn't want to end up being an individual who worked over 30 years, making over 6 figures, having no savings, no retirement plan, nothing saved for the kids' education, and ultimately, for me, it became about breaking the cycle that I was in that's all too common from people who come from environments, and it is shedding those mental chains. I mean, I was in a cycle of poverty, and I knew that I needed to break that cycle. And it's interesting because as an educator, I always talk to kids about having a growth mindset, that you're able to rewire your brain to learn new things. And I realized at some point that I was stuck in some really bad habits, and that I needed to take the advice I was given to other folk and rewire my brain, so I can start making some adjustments to improve our marriage, and ultimately give my kids what I really wanted to give them, which was a life where they understood money and wealth. And another thing, buying all of that stuff, spending, because I spent on you too. I would go right into a store and drop a lot of money for a new purse, that more than likely would just sit in a closet, that you wouldn't use. And that instant gratification of just buying and charging stuff, why I thought I was really spoiling folks, and really it was also for me as well. It felt good for me to just go in without thinking and just spending money, and finally realizing that I was kind of trapped, this prison, this poverty mindset that I have, where you kind of get stuck and convinced that there's no way out, and that wealth and abundance and nice homes and traveling, that's for other people, And so it was shedding those mental chains and realizing that with a shift in perspective that we can do some like amazing things with the money that we were bringing in.
So good. Oh my gosh, you said so many things that I want to touch on. One of the things you said was like, it was, buying those things was bringing you joy. And I talk about this with my clients all the time, is that when we indulge in instant gratification, we do get a hit of dopamine that feels good in the moment, but it is very short-lived. And on the other side of that is a negative consequence. And you just said it, it felt joyful in the moment, but then it was stress. Our marriage was stressed, our bank account was stressed. And ultimately, even though the goal in your mind at the time was to give our kids a better life, it was actually robbing them of having the life that we really wanted them to have. And thank God we were able to turn things around in enough time so that we can, we did have time to provide that for them. But I love how you said, you were in a poverty mindset, because a lot of times people think a poverty mindset is just for those who are in poverty. Like you look at their income and, oh, you're below the poverty line. But no, we were making 6 figures right out the gate. So when we joined our lives, we both were doing very well, and we were making 6 figures. Now, I'm sure your mom didn't make, more than probably 40 or 50,000. Same for my parents. So when we pulled our money together, you couldn't tell us anything. We just thought we made enough. We could handle it. We weren't going to tell ourselves no. We were going to say yes to everything. And I think that we were both living that way. I think I started to feel the stress of it maybe a little sooner than you, but you started to notice it as well. So do you remember like the first time when, you felt like, okay, maybe it's time to make a change?
Well, yeah, I remember talking about, I don't know if the banks had started or started this or if it was already in, but we had this check protect. So if you spend more than you have in your savings, they'll let the charges go through, but they'll assess you a fee. And at one point, I remember looking, and I think we probably had $600-700 worth the check protect fees. I mean, it was unbelievable the amount of money the bank was making off of us, like we were trying to sustain the bank ourselves. And so at that point, it started to get stressful because by the time you got paid, the money was already spent. The money was already gone and completely accounted for in check protect fees. And it started to really limit our ability to do anything, to travel, to shop. And, that wasn't a fun place. That wasn't a fun place to be.
Yeah, I remember Check Protect because it was like, yeah, we'll cover that fee. We'll let that debit for $5 go through, and we're going to charge you $35 every time you do it. And I do remember you're spot on. One time it was more than $500, and one of us got paid, and then it was just like, boop, 500, 600, whatever it was gone. And it was like, you can't play catch up with that. Like it was a vicious cycle. And I remember that. And that's when I really started to become stressed out, because around that time, we now had 2 kids in daycare, and the daycare bill was just as much as our mortgage. And so it was just like so many things. We had a timeshare. We had student loans. At that point, we had like over $100,000 in student loans. We had a car payment. We just had a lot going on, plus Check Protect. And I think that's when I started, stressing out and Googling, like looking for answers. And that's when I found the Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And I brought that to you, and you were like, absolutely not. But then you came around and we ended up going that route. And I thought that that was the answer to all of our prayers and everything was done and we were going to be fine, but it wasn't. We were still kind of living like that, even though we had, quote unquote, done something that was going to take some of the stress off. The stress was the creditors couldn't call us anymore, but we still had to make all the payments. We still had to make the daycare payments, the mortgage payments, the car payments, the student loan payments. Like all of that stuff still needed to be taken care of. So what do you think was like the wake up call? I know the Check Protect was when the stress started to come. But like, what was like a wake up call that was like, okay, something's got to change? Do you remember that? Or was that your wake up call?
Well, my wake up call was one, living check to check, and also seeing the amount of stress that you are under trying to make the budget work in the midst of a lot of overspending. And it wasn't just me overspending. I mean, I want to, hey, we were both spending and you were shopping as well.
Yes, I was.
But seeing the amount of stress that it was bringing to our marriage, and it just wasn't working. And ultimately, it was a situation that I didn't want to lose the person that I loved so much. And so I realized that a change needed to be made quickly, to change the dynamic that we were having, with the results of the overspending and the debt that we had, the credit card bills and all of the other stuff. So I realized, just based on the dynamic, that some changes definitely needed to be made.
Yes. And I started, looking even further, because the Chapter 13, it didn't really do much because we were still the same people. As you said, we were both still overspending. And honestly, the Chapter 13 kind of gave us free reins, because it was like, well, nobody can call us if we're late with our payments because, we're in Chapter 13. I think for me, the wake up call was when my dad gifted me and my sisters Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover book. And the reason why I think it was a wake-up call, I really wouldn't even call it a wake-up call. It was more of an awakening, because it was like, oh, I don't have to live like this. I thought that it was just going to be our lot in life to struggle with money. That was just how life was going to be. And then to have that book come and say, actually, no, there's a better way. Now, his way was a little more restrictive than we were willing to deal with, but it was still like, oh my God, there is light at the end of the tunnel if we follow these steps. So do you remember when I brought the Dave Ramsey plan to you and I was like, listen, all we have to do is do this, and this, and not do any of this, and then we can be debt free and we can get back to enjoying life again? Do you remember that conversation?
I do. I remember when he gifted you the book, and honestly, when you weren't looking, I was actually reading through Dave Ramsey's book, and it really helped because on my end, in terms of a strategy for managing money, I never had any kind of strategy. It was just a financial free for all. It is like being dropped off in Chicago and given a map of Detroit and trying to find your way around. Like, it's completely navigating without a compass, no map, and just figuring it out through spending. And ultimately the book was an awakening. I really like the things Dave Ramsey talked about. And even though we might not have gone as extreme, we really started to implement a lot of the things that he was teaching, and kind of embracing a new approach to how we thought about money. So it did help change. To give you credit, you were really, more pragmatic and initially more forward thinking. And I know that your mindset started to shift sooner than mine. But when we started to work together, we began to kind of rewrite the narrative of what's possible financially for us. And it's been an empowering journey from a scarcity mindset to more abundance. And it's been empowering. There's a level of freedom that you have. There's just a level of freedom and empowerment that I have that I never had. It's the feeling I was trying to achieve by spending all of the money that I was spending. And so breaking free from that old mindset, it has been nothing short of liberating. And I tell you what's crazy is I had an American Express bill at the time, and every month I had a balance, and I thought that there was no way that I could ever not have credit card debt. Like, it was part of my DNA. It was just, I was so used to it. Never knew that credit cards could actually be paid off, and that you can, operate with just spending cash and not, paying all of these, the late fees and interest, and the stress, the freedom. It's amazing. It's been one of the greatest feelings in the world. And ultimately, those pieces saved our marriage, I believe.
Yeah. And you talk about freedom. Sometimes people think that freedom is just being able to spend without thinking and just, impulsively do whatever you want to do and never ever tell yourself no. But really, that's not freedom. Freedom is being able to have control of your money and know exactly where it's going and putting it where is best for you and your family, not just for today, but also for the future. And it's so empowering. I tell my clients all the time, or women who are interested in working with me, like, they're always afraid of, being put on a strict budget. And I don't believe in that. And to your point, like, Dave Ramsey's way is good, but we did it a different way. So, he says, only have $1,000 in the bank. We had a little bit more than that at the time, not a lot. He also says, don't contribute to your retirement while you're in debt. We didn't do that because my company offered an amazing match of like 6%. There was no way we were going to leave that on the table. And honestly, I give you credit because I wanted to do everything he said exactly the way he said it. And you were like, that one right there, we can't leave that 6% on the table. Do you remember that?
Well, some of it was also me pushing back and me being a little stubborn. And part of it was change is difficult. It's interesting that, change is very difficult for folks, especially when you've been conditioned and you have habits. Again, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy of scarcity for me. It was a deep-seated belief that, look, this is the best that I can ever do. I don't really deserve to live in this nice. It's crazy the way you think, and how it impacts that. And it was really just changing the way that I think about money and what was possible. And so, yeah.
100%. And I'm glad you pushed back on some of the ideas because that led me to figuring out a way that we can, live our lives and still create memories with the boys and still give them some things that we couldn't have when we were younger, but it didn't come in lieu of us building wealth. It didn't come instead of us saving for their college. Right now we have a kid in college who we're paying cash for, which is an amazing feeling. I remember we paid cash for them to have braces on their teeth outside of the insurance, of course. So all of the things that we wanted for them, we were able to give them. I remember growing up wanting braces and couldn't get them because my family just couldn't afford them until I was in college. And I remember, I don't know if you may recall this, when we put braces on our oldest teeth, I was in so much gratitude. Like, I was like, oh my God, he was 13 maybe, or maybe even 12. And I was able to take him to the orthodontist and put braces on his teeth. That was something that I wasn't able to get when I was younger. And back to your initial point where we were like, we're just trying to give our kids the lives we didn't have. I think we were able to do that in a more meaningful way once we really changed our mindset and made a decision that we were no longer going to live in that poverty mindset, living check to check, even though we made so much money. And here's the thing, our incomes continued to grow and grow like crazy. You got promoted, I got new jobs and promotions. And so our income was growing. So it wasn't that we didn't have the money. I want everybody to hear me when I say this. We made plenty of money, but we still lived in a way that caused us to feel like we didn't have any. And so if that is you, just notice those thought patterns that's making you continue to live like that. And if you want help, you are always welcome to join me inside of the Wealthy Woman's Academy. You can learn more about it by going to www.jermainefoley.com/WWA. Remember, that's Jermaine with the G, because you do not have to live in this cycle that we're talking about. And thank God we broke free. And so many of the women that I work with are breaking free because we're working together on it right now. So
yeah, and like you said, and it's interesting when you think that you're giving your kids everything by just giving them material types of, the latest games and the latest gadgets and toys. Ultimately, we really weren't giving them, I really wasn't giving them really what I wanted to give them. When your house starts to become unstable from arguing and things of that nature, you're not contributing to a healthy household. That type of lifestyle focused on just immediate gratification is not sustainable over time. And ultimately, what you don't want to do is look back and see that you passed down a bunch of bad habits to your children that ultimately sets them up for failure. If you really care about your kids, if you really love your kids, love is not about just giving and giving. It's about action, and sometimes your actions, even though you mean well, your actions don't necessarily show. You're not showing love through your actions, and so it was about being able to pass something down to the kids. That was because I remember when we started, with the Dave Ramsey thing. I remember like over Christmas they got these Dave Ramsey packs, and it was how to save money, a spend envelope, and one for giving, and just teaching them how to manage and grow money and how money works and how credit works, and talking to them about those things at a very early age. That became like a common purpose and a common focus. And I remember with some conversations that you were having with me, just kind of you envisioning like a new legacy for our family, and being able to not end up like me graduating from Michigan State grad with $80,000 in debt, and our kids not having, and then you graduate with the amount of debt that you had from loans, and being in a position where our kids didn't have to struggle the way we did. So it was really trying to and just envisioning a new legacy for our family, and that became where we had to share goals and values about what we really wanted to leave our boys with when we're long gone from this place. And so, that was one of the things that kind of grounded us and where we found some common ground.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is like we were able to turn it around, and we Another dream that I had was that I wanted to build my dream home. I wanted to live in this beautiful home that was built from the ground up. I didn't want to move into anyone else's home. I wanted to build it myself. And you supported that as well, even though it was a little bougie, I'm sure. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, you were the first to really, because it's interesting. I was comfortable where we were. We had built our first house. It was nice, but the walls were starting to close in. It was a smaller home. It was our first home. And I was comfortable because the payments, how much we've already paid off. And just honestly, I didn't think I deserved. I still mentally didn't think I deserved to be anywhere better. Like, I thought that was the best. I mean, there were just internally, there was a lot of fears, it was just really interesting, just the psychology behind it all, the science behind it all. But, our discussions about money were kind of key to breaking free from the poverty mindset. Even though I didn't always seem like I was listening and wanting to participate, those did become spaces where I was able to initially listen to your dreams. You were dreaming big, affirming the worthiness of having an amazing life, and kind of putting together strategies and plans for us to make those dreams a reality. And learning to talk about money without tension, was a crucial step in, our path to becoming financially solvent. And the conversations became less about numbers and really kind of a focus on our dreams, the future that we wanted to build, the future we wanted to have for our kids. And it was in the midst of these talks that, I found, the courage to shift my perspective, my thinking from earning and just spending every dime to investing in our future, our children's education, just creating a legacy of wealth and knowledge for our kids. That became something that just resonated with me so strongly, wanting to provide that for our children. So, yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing to hear. Like, your vision, what you want, what you desire is so important. And I say this on the podcast a lot. Like, if you have a desire, listen to it, because I believe 100% that God is friendly towards your dreams, your desires, and your goals. And there's nothing on this earth that's too good for you. And so I just started dreaming big. Listen, I'm not done dreaming. I have huge dreams up in my head that will come to pass. I know they will. But I'm just happy that you were along for the ride. You were my ride or die. We are doing this and we continue to do it. So one last question for you. What advice would you give to other high-earning couples who might be facing similar financial challenges in their relationship?
Ooh, advice. I would probably say to my fellow high earners who make good money and are navigating the world, between today's pleasures and tomorrow's prosperity. I would say, if you have children, start building your children's legacy now. And the time to start is not tomorrow, but it's today. It's now. And, it's not just about the wealth you accumulate, but the financial acumen that you pass down to your children. And then some other pieces of advice I would give folks is, and so beginning with the basics, having an emergency fund, when things happen. I would really encourage people to start putting funds away for their children's education. I think that providing an education for your children, I think that's the cornerstone of any legacy. Don't overlook the power of investing. A lot of companies have 401ks with matching. I would consider maxing that out. Like I was always telling you to max your company matches, like max that out. And so your money can work for you and you can create a nice financial cushion, a buffer that grows over time. I would encourage people to make sure you have a life insurance policy, basic things. And so your family is provided for in your absence. I think those are like responsible financial plans that are key to kind of becoming just financially literate and ensuring that your legacy is not just about wealth, but the wisdom and the lessons that you pass on, I think are powerful. So those will be a few things. And again, if your better half for the men, if your women are, your wives are nudging you, just understand that, if you were like me early on, that your financial past, some of those pieces kind of shape, who you are. And so thinking about that, I think you can, some small nudging, you can make some shifts and it'll make a huge difference. So finally, I would just say, just scrutinize your beliefs about money and your worthiness. And I can tell you that financial freedom, it is amazing. Just changing your thoughts about your spending habits. It is empowering. Just challenge those old thoughts and watch how your life, your marriage, just watch how that will transform. It'll be in ways you never thought possible. And you will live a life that you couldn't even imagine. And I'll just say this one last thing. When we moved into this house, and it's a nice house, we moved into this house, we were both almost embarrassed to be living here. We just really, we were getting used to living in this type of neighborhood, in this type of house, that, were we really deserving of it? I mean, it was really strange, and so it is really, we all have the ability to change our thoughts. And also the key to changing those habits, honestly, swiping out those old habits with new, shiny thoughts, with just ambitious thoughts and things. And my wife had really led the charge in that. And ultimately, you will end up building and leaving a legacy for your kids that it'll sustain through generations. So, those are my thoughts.
Love it. Love it. And I talk about how we felt when I think I told more about myself. I can't remember what podcast episode it was, but I talked about it, and it was really not thinking we were worthy. And the gist of that episode was, you're worthy for anything that you want. And that was a huge growth opportunity for both of us to realize, like, there's nothing on this earth that's too good for us. We're children of God. God created us all equal. And no matter who you are, these principles are universal. If you're Black, white, male, female, it doesn't matter. These principles are universal. We're all worthy. We all have the ability to dream. We all have the ability to create the desires of our heart, to make those reality. There's just so much available to us if we can just break free from the recycled thoughts that are keeping us stuck. I also talked a lot about getting outside your financial comfort zone. Like, all of that stuff is what we had to do to get to where we are today. And so, man, I thank you for not only being here with me today, but being my partner in life and indulging me and listening to all my dreams and my goals and being a huge, huge, huge support system. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Love you.
Love you too. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye. Hey, before you go, if you're ready to create a life with more money and more freedom, then you're invited to join the Wealthy Woman's Academy, my signature coaching program where you'll learn how to take control of your money and build wealth without sacrificing your lifestyle. To get started, head on over to jermainefoley.com/WWA. That's Jermaine with a G. See you over there. Bye-bye.